Alright, what's up guys, it's Dr. Large, and today I'm talking to you about Master Duel's best of one format. Is this good? Is this what we should be sticking with? There's a lot of different factors in this, so I'm going to break it down to these 4 points. I'm going to talk about the context, so how is Yu-Gi-Oh at the moment? Is this viable for an esport? What is a side deck? What does it mean and is it good? And the laddering. Is it good for actually playing the game? Personally, I've come to actually like this. For a lot of different reasons, which I'll start to explain. But first of all, let's get to the context. Now, the TCG and the OCG, obviously similar games, they've got different cards, different ban lists, but they all fundamentally play the same. They're both best of 3 formats, and the issue is a lot of games get decided by the side deck. You know, a lot of games you can just put things in from your side deck and win a lot of them. A lot of real esport events are also best of 3. And the reason is this helps mitigate the random chance of, you know, bricking, right? If you're a Yu-Gi-Oh player, you'll know, damn, I drew 3 of this card, or damn, I drew this 1 engine piece I needed, right? So logically, best of 3 should make sense, right? Well, on screen you can see 6 very, very powerful cards. However, they're not always useful. Some of these cards are really quite oppressive to deal with. Nibiru is ridiculous sometimes. Skill Drain, a lot of people can say is unfun, especially now that it's a 3. Jordan Lockbird can just end your turn. Harpy's Feather Duster negates pretty much your entire deck's purpose. Dark Ruler No More, negate an entire board. What was the point of making it? Do you know what I mean? So, yeah. With the history of overrunning as well, it can make the game very difficult to participate in. As someone who's played the TCG at a local level, and I've been to one major event, I didn't win and didn't even top, but as someone who's had his experience in the game, I can tell you the game overruns a lot. Even with the new time rules that they put in TCG, never mind the time rules there are in Master Duel where you get 400 seconds. Yeah, no. The game overruns, and a lot of these cards that are on screen right now can swing the game way too heavily in the favor of the person who has them, and it can be really unfun in a lot of cases. Now, Master Duel is not the TCG and OCG. It is Yu-Gi-Oh, but it is not the TCG and OCG. What does this mean? It doesn't have to be best of 3. It's a different format, it's a different game. They can do what they need to with this. They don't have to make it the same game that we've been buying and playing for nearly 20 years now. Why don't they experiment? Why don't they make it different? The rules and rulings are different. There are certain cards that simply work differently and in some cases wrong. Notably, I think an example is Prankid's Meow Meow Moo. Now, if you don't understand a lot of the meta, you might not understand what that card is. But Meow Meow Moo is the Prankid's Link 1 monster, where you banish it from the graveyard to activate your Prankid's effects when they tribute themselves instead of tributing them. It's supposed to be once per turn, but it's just not. That's an issue. They're also going for a different audience, and it's different marketing. They're not trying to get the same audience. They want to make it more casual friendly. They want to make it something that more new people can just pick up and play. So this is very important for Konami to really distinguish themselves. So what can we be looking at forward? Well, first of all, the best of one is best for the spectators, and that's what they want. They want it to be a game that you can watch. I really don't enjoy watching Yu-Gi-Oh events because it feels incredibly slow. In Master Duel, if you know it's best of 1 round, I think I might actually watch it because events don't feel like they would be dragging on as much. They might be slow because of how certain formats go, but this really lets us experiment and understand. Actually, sometimes when events take so long, they're just not fun to watch, you know. Obviously, the custom ban list is going to be staying the same. People are saying, "Oh, it's an old OCG list." No, it's not. This is a completely new list, and when they start adding new cards, it'll probably have its own different hits than the OCG and DCG. But this has got a completely different approach to it than Duel Links and the TCG OCG have had for a while. You know, it's not been about laddering for the most part. You know, Duel Links had their ladder, and obviously it had a very similar format. But it's not had this, we don't have the same events as Duel Links. It's not a matter of grind. It's a matter of getting and play and enjoy yourself. Especially with the whole crafting system. Miles better than Duel Links. But most importantly, Best of One is more consumable. That's the most important thing. They want this to be consumable. Yu-Gi-Oh! Has had this issue of being a fringe game for a long time because you have to really be into it to understand it and enjoy it. They want to make Yu-Gi-Oh! Consumable. They want to make it fun and enjoyable. They want casual players to be able to get into it, and they want viewers to be able to watch it. That's what they're after. So really, Best of One's here to stay. From an esport perspective, Best of One's here to stay. The esport scene is going to be a lot more consumable. Again, I use that word a lot, but there's a reason. They're going to make this game a lot more fun. Probably not the best word to put it, but they're going to make it more watchable. They want to make it more getting and play. The events won't take anywhere near as long, thank God. Having to play in tournaments until like past midnight wasn't fun. And honestly, I believe that this is going to lead to a better future for Yu-Gi-Oh! So what's the side deck? The side deck is up to 15 cards, which you may exchange with your main deck and extra deck in between games in a best of 3 match system, as long as you take out the same number. So, if I take 7 cards out of my main deck, I can put in 7 cards from my side deck. I can take out 1 card from my extra deck and put 1 in there. So you have to have the equal exchange. You can't just put these cards into your deck and you can't just take cards out of your deck. This allows you to prep for your metagame. So if I'm going against something topical which might be Adamancipator, I would want to put Dark Ruler No More in. Why? Because Dark Ruler No More is incredible against a lot of Adamancipator lists, because really they can't do much. So stuff like that where you can side dependent on what is needed for the format. It helps the smaller decks compete against the higher decks, and it lets certain decks win the matchups where they would have just outright lost immediately. So what are the pros and cons? Larger decks get their opportunity to compete with the higher tier decks. Something like Madolche might be able to compete with something like Tri-Brigade Zoo. Tri-Brigade Zoo is by far the better deck. But if I'm playing Madolche, I might just have the outs. It gives you more deck building creativity. You've got another 15 cards to decide on, and you have to be aware of the metagame for them. It's not a matter of, okay, well, what does my deck do? How do I make it do the best? What's the format do, and how do I counter that the best? And it creates a fairer playing field amongst a lot of archetypes. Obviously, Tri-Brigade Zoo is going to always be at the top level because it's simply the best deck, and it also has access to a side deck as well, bear in mind. But it lets smaller decks, maybe something at a rogue tier, compete in the main events, something like, to bring it to mind, that Grasstock Screener Skull Servants, which is something I play, and there's a deck list on this channel. It should be the upload previous to this, but I will leave a link in the end cards for you to go read that. Now the issue is it's an easy instant win button. There are a lot of times where simply put, I can just activate a card and that's it, you're done. I can Nibiru you and that's it, your turn ends. I can activate Droll, your turn ends. I can activate Harpy's Feather Duster, Dark Ruler No More, Droplets, and your turn ends. Which that's not fun. One card ending a game is not fun. A lot of side deck staples just invalidate the decks. Something like Skill Drain. I can just invalidate an awful lot of decks right there. Soul Drain, as I brought up on the other screen. Not a popular floodgate, but I can just invalidate certain decks. That's something that I personally used a lot of during Orcus. Because you could just flip Soul Drain, and that was it. They couldn't do anything. I guess it's good against Thunder Dragons as well. While they still have their effects in hand. Their graveyard and banish effects, done. So that's really quite an issue. And, any deck can have the side deck. Any deck can have all these extra really powerful cards to prep them for anything they might see. And that's really quite dangerous, because all it does is maintain the top decks of the top decks. They have the cards to counter you, and you have the cards to counter them. It doesn't really even the playing field that way. So this is something I like to call the cycle of the side deck. This is a little theory that I'm sure a lot of people are aware of. It's something I've made explicitly aware of to a lot of people. And the example I'm going to use is Orcus, because this is something that I was very aware of. This is my favorite format was the Eternal format, Toss format. and I was very aware of the Orcus matchup. So we're gonna start with the deck becomes popular. We're talking about Orcus too. You know, Orcus starts getting his power, Galatea, Dingisu, that's all coming out. So the card gets side decked to be beaten. So whenever people want to activate the Harp Aura, people use the Lancia. What Lancia does is you tribute it from the hand, and your opponent can't activate, they can't banish cards. So the deck now starts to lose because everyone's siding Lancia, right? Orcus starts to die off in its popularity, so people start playing it. However, now that the cards are being sided out because people start playing the deck becomes popular again. And we enter this cycle until eventually people just say, do you know what, it doesn't matter, I'm just going to keep going. And people just say, do you know what, it doesn't matter, I'm going to keep my Lancias in. And at the end of the day, it just dampens down the power level, really. So cycle of the side deck is something I find can be really quite annoying, especially for people who don't have the money to invest in new decks. So it's something to keep in mind when thinking about this. The side deck can be infuriating from a money perspective. Not as big an issue in Master Duel, but still can come up. So therefore, this leaves the game feeling even more sacky than normal. You know, sometimes when you don't have the space in your main deck, you put in your side deck and it's like, oh, I just didn't draw the cards in my side deck, that was it. It didn't matter. And yeah, even more decks can be invalidated. It just reduces the variation of decks available. If I have a great deck, Goki's an incredibly fun deck, but it loses to draw. If my opponent just side decks draw, that's it, I lose. I can't play the game. However, this does allow lower tier decks to have their answers to meta decks. You know, something like, again, we use Madolche as an example. Madolche now has its Dark Ruler No Mores, its Forbidden Droplets to answer Tri-Brigade Zoo, Adamantipator, right? However, you could also argue that it's pretty unfair. If they couldn't answer it, they shouldn't have been the top deck. They shouldn't have been able to compete. That's how the best decks are decided. It should be what decks are best, not what decks just have the outs. And it lets you have access to more power cards to remove some of the sacky nature. Though I've already expressed, you still have to draw them, you still have to see them, and a lot of them aren't searchable. It's really a bit of an iffy area for it. So generally, I actually dislike the side deck. I only realized I disliked it having played Master Duel, where you don't need it. It makes too many decks invalid too easily. For example, Eldritch, say what you will about the deck gets invalidated by things like Harpy's Feather Duster if you just don't have Judgment. It bubbles decks. It doesn't actually represent a lot of decks' power. It represents, could they see their side deck cards? Which is why we have that one deck in the TCG at the moment, which is literally just a pile of the best cards and costs like $400 US. Ridiculous. That's the issue here. It doesn't represent the real power of the deck, it represents the weakness of the format. So this just means we have to make more sacrifices in deck building, honestly. You have to be sacrificing of, oh, well, if I lose this card, that's it. You know, if this card's really popular right now, this deck simply can't thrive. Side deck bad is my takeaway message from that. Now, side decking is less accessible to a new player. If I'm coming right into the game, I can figure out, you know, an extra deck, a main deck. Side deck can be a bit complicated sometimes. It doesn't take long to learn, I'll admit, but sometimes it can be a bit complicated. The longer matches can be less appealing to a casual audience, and this is what I want to talk about the most. A best of one match right now is like 5 to 20 minutes on ladder. Getting to Plat 1 really isn't that bad. If it was best of 3, I would say maybe like 13 to 60 minutes, right? 13 minutes is if, you know, you go 2-0 and you've stormed them, right? Because bear in mind, you also have to wait for the time for people to side deck as well, think about the matchups. Sometimes the extra time just adds up, it adds up, and it just makes laddering even more dragged out. Which is why personally, I enjoy laddering on Master Duel, but I would never try and ladder on something like Dueling Book, where it's always best of 3, you have to side deck, and it just takes forever and ever and ever. To put this into perspective, there are 17 total tiers on the ladder right now. And if you have multiple games per match per tier, that means that there could be 50 hours to reach Plat 1. And some people would say, oh, but that's fair. But that's not what the game's about. The game's about being accessible to casuals. It wants people to be able to get in and feel like they understand the game and they're having fun. Especially when you bear in mind there are more tiers that have been data mined that we still have to get. So this really could end up being like way too long for someone who's got an actual life outside of playing video games to be able to reach these tiers. It really does feel like it could end up ruining the game. So it just takes too long for it to be a best of 3, and it makes laddering a test of endurance and not just your skill. I don't have the time in my day to go ladder like gold 1 to, or sorry, gold 5 to plat 1 if it's going to be best of 3. I don't have the time for that. I have a life. And that just doesn't make it a fair game. That doesn't make it accessible. That's the issue. When a game is quick, it's accessible, you can play, then it becomes a fair playing field for people. So I would say that's a bad idea. Finally, to conclude, while it's not perfect, I will accept it's not perfect, I absolutely prefer single matches with no side deck. 2 readily available instant wins. If it's in your main deck, fair enough, you had to make sacrifices for that. But the side deck, you don't really have to make the sacrifices. You get to determine the sacrifices once you're there. It's too liberal in the deck building, not in a political way, but it's too free. There's too much you can just do extra without the consequences. It limits the real variety in deck usage, while you might say, oh, well, I can have all these things in my other deck. Yes, but now the big guys have also got the power cards to stop you. It makes the game just more drawn out. It takes too long, which is a real problem. It doesn't actually fix the Saki issues. You still have to draw all the side deck cards, and if you don't draw them, honestly, you're just going to feel more annoyed, more tilted, and really nice the nature of the game. So yeah, guys, make sure that you subscribe. Click down below, press the subscribe button, and when the end card pops up, there will be a link to my That Graphic Screener profile, as well as my Adamantipator profile. Make sure you guys give them a like. I've also got a video on my channel of why Adamantipator is good. But let me know what you think. I will make sure to make content based on your recommendations.